Hey folks, Chris Rich, AZ Fly Shop. Welcome back to the channel. You bet. Folks, in this video, I'm going to give you my top 10 tips and tricks to make your fly fishing experience more enjoyable, more productive, more relaxing, whatever term it is that you want to use. Folks, I've been fly fishing for 45 years. I've been lucky enough to fly fish all over the world. I have no idea how many different species of fish that I've caught. I love to fly fishing. I love it so much that I opened AZ Fly Shop. Now, I fish with a lot of people. Some people are brand new. It's their first time out to fly fish. Some people have been fly fishing longer than me and everywhere in between. When I'm fishing in a new location, quite often I fish with a guide. Maybe I'm in Slovenia. I have no idea what's going on over there. I hire a guide. When I go to a new location, I do that quite often. I learn a lot from almost everybody that I fish with. I even learn from people that are virtually brand new. We all have something to teach each other. I'm going to give you the top 10 tips and tricks that I see people, I wouldn't call them mistakes, but things that they could do to make their life easier. There's also going to be some bonus tips. So stay hooked. Let's jump right in. Tip number 1. Fly fishing is not a competition. Yeah, I enjoy friendly competition with my friends when I'm out fishing. Folks, people come into the shop all the time. People see me out on the water somewhere and they stop me. I love to fly fish, but I'm just not very good at it. Folks, it's not a competition. This is literally something that we do for fun and enjoyment. It's a way that we get out into nature. We get to chase the fish. We get to connect with other people that we're with. We get to have camaraderie. It's not a competition. The only way to get better is to get on the water and do more of it. And remember, we're not competing. Maybe we're competing with the fish, trying to trick the fish. But again, follow these tips and tricks that are coming. They'll make your life easier on the water. Tip number 2, how do you correctly put a fly rod together? Folks, I'm out again with a lot of people. I've fished for 45 years, fly fished. I have actually seen some horrible mistakes happen when people are trying to put their fly rod together. Let me show you what I've seen, what you want to avoid, and the correct way to put this together. I've got a Sage rod. Let's open this up. This rod has not been opened. It came from the factory, from Sage, in the tube, in the sock, okay? And this is how every fly rod that comes to the shop, this is how it actually comes to us. So the factory puts it together this way. And I want you to notice one thing, and I'm going to show you a couple of little pieces here. Oftentimes, here's how I take it out. So I get the sock, I hold on to the edges of the sock. I rest it against my belly and I just ease the sock down. The ends of each of the 4 sections of the rod are now out of the sock. I now come up and I take all 4 sections. Now, I want you to notice in this how this rod comes from the factory, okay? The butt section of the first piece, or the butt piece, is the thick end is sticking up. It's at the top of the sock. Then these other 4 sections, the skinny section of these pieces is at the top. Now, I believe, and I've heard the rod manufacturers talk about the reason they do it this way, is this tip section of your fly rod is going to be the section that's most likely to break. It's the skinniest, it's the most tender, it's the most fragile piece of your fly rod. Having it up against your butt section when it's inside the tube, inside the sock, is going to give it a little bit of added protection. Okay, I then take these out. This is exactly the way I'm going to put it away as well. So I take these out. I then turn these pieces around. Folks, I've been doing it 45 years. I didn't always do it this way. I do it the same way every time now. I could literally put the rod together with my eyes closed. I've been doing it so much. I'm going to turn these 3 sections around. Now they're all facing the right direction. What I see a lot of people do, most common mistake, beginners start with the butt end and then they go to the second section of the fly rod, and then somewhere along the way they have to set this fly rod down. They go to the fourth section or the third section. They set it down on the ground. They're coming up to the fourth section of the fly rod, the tip section, and I have actually seen right about that time someone walks around the corner of the vehicle, steps on the fly rod that's on the ground. Oh, I'm so sorry, that was an accident. It probably was an accident. It was a common accident. I've seen it happen more than once. Nonetheless, we've just ruined our day of fly fishing because we now have a broken rod and we can't go fly fish. Let me show you how I put this together. There is a correct way to put it together. It does make sense. It does work. I've got all four sections. I start out at the very tip end. I put that in to the next section of the fly rod. I put it in snug, not too hard, but snug. I then come down the fly rod. I put the next section in. I do my best to make sure these eyes are lined up, the guides are lined up. I put the butt section into the second section. I look down the rod. Yep, the eyes are pretty lined up. Now, I'm in control of the fly rod the entire time. The tip is in the air, the fly rod is in my hand. I have no chance for someone to walk around the corner not being aware that my fly rod's on the ground. I don't want to have a broken rod. Tip number 2, put your fly rod together correctly. Tip number 3, how to unpackage and unwind a package leader. Now folks, when I get to the river, I get to the water, I get out of my car, I put my gear together, I'm in a hurry to get out and start fishing. I have ruined dozens, or if not more, package leaders by being in too much of a hurry and shortcutting this next step that I'm going to show you. It's very simple, takes a little bit of patience. How do we unpackage this correctly? Open the package, take the leader out. So I'm going to take the packaged leader. This is a tapered packaged leader. This is the very thin end of the leader. There's a loop on the thick end of the leader. Okay? That thick end of the leader is wrapped around the leader. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this between these 4 fingers, and I'm going to slowly maneuver the thick end of the leader, all the while keeping pressure on these 4 fingers. Now, I sometimes get down to about here and I think, oh, it looks like it's undone, I can just pull the whole thing off. That's when you make that move and you pull that off, you will end up with a tangled mess that will probably leave your leader ruined. You want to leave that pressure there all the way as you unwind this package leader. And I just slowly take my time. I don't want to ruin the leader, so I'm going to keep the pressure there until all of it comes apart. And there we are. Here's the bonus tip, folks. When you take that leader out, the line has some memory. There's a couple of things that you can do to take that memory, that kinkiness, out of the line. An easy way is I'm going to put pressure, I'm going to hold the line and put pressure on this thumb. I'm going to pull it across that thumb. It's going to generate a little bit of stretch in the line and a little bit of heat in the line. Actually, that spot on my thumb is getting a little hot. So I'm going to move it over just a little bit. But that little bit of heat that pressure and friction causes is going to cause this line to all straighten out. There's a little bit of heat, so I'm going to move it. You'll feel the heat when you do this. But you're going to end up with all that memory and all that kinkiness out of the line when you get done with this, and your leader will be ready to fish. There we have it. There's a little bit of memory there. I can go over that again. Tip number 3, how to unpackage your package leader. Tip number 4, how to make a correct loop-to-loop connection. Okay, I've got the loop on the tapered leader. I've got the welded loop on the end of the fly line. Almost all major brand fly lines and leaders, tapered leaders, are going to have a loop in the end of them. What I'm going to do is take the fly line, I'm going to put it right through the loop in the tapered leader. I'm going to pinch it and hold it in my hand. I'm going to come back a couple of inches, I'm going to fold that over, and I'm going to come right through the loop in the tapered leader. You got to make sure that that gets pinched down small enough, and I'm going to come right through. Now I'm going to just bring my leader through. So my leader comes all the way through. I've got to now take the knot in that tapered leader through the loop in the fly line. Okay? I'm going to pull that snug, and that gives us what's called a handshake connection. You can see that we've got a nice loop-to-loop handshake connection there. Folks, that is the correct way to put your leader, make that connection between your fly line and your tapered leader. The other way where you put it's the incorrect way. The correct way is to put the fly line through the loop of the tapered leader and then feed that line through the loop in the fly line, and you end up with that correct handshake. Tip number 5, how do you correctly string up your fly rod? Get your line through the guides of the fly rod. Folks, I see people do this all the time. What a lot of people will do is they'll come down to the very end of their leader, and they'll begin to string that through each of the guides. So there they go. They set their fly rod down. They are stringing the very end of their line, their leader, right through. Okay, and they're going like this, and then they get up here, and somewhere they fumble around, and they I dropped it, and all that line runs all the way back through the end of the rod, and I have to start over. And it's okay if that's the way you want to do it. You can do it however you want to. Let me show you a simpler way that'll make it easier for you. What I do is I pull out enough line out of my reel that I'm going to be able to go the fly line all the way out of my reel so that I'm going to be able to string up my 9-foot fly rod. I come back onto my fly line, maybe 5 or 6 inches. I fold that over. I get a little tiny loop right there in my fly line. Now I'm going to feed that loop through each of my guides as I come up. Okay? So I'm going to feed that. I'm going to set my fly rod down. I'm going to be cautious that I don't set it down where someone might come around the corner and step on it. I'm going to feed that, fold it over fly line, all the way through the guides. It's much easier to grab onto than the very end of my leader. When I get up here and I fumble around and drop it, oh look, it stopped right there. I don't have to start all over again. So I just bring that all the way through each of the guides. It's much easier to hold on to. If I happen to fumble, which from time to time I get a little clumsy and I fumble, it stops right here and I don't have to start the process over again. Tip number 5, learn how to correctly string up your fly rod. Again, folks, if you have a way that works easier for you, by all means go do it. I've just found that over the years, for me, this makes it a lot easier for me, a little bit less frustration. I don't like frustration when I'm out there chasing fish. Tip number 6, learn to tie knots, and learn to tie them quickly and efficiently. I recommend that you learn knots and you practice those knots. Now, folks, there's a few knots that you have to know. You have to know how to attach your leader or tippet to your fly. Okay, and there's several different knots that you can utilize. On our YouTube channel, I've got a playlist, Must Know Fly Knots, Easy Step-by-Step Instructions. Now, the other knot that you need to know, so you got to be able to attach your fly to your leader or tippet material. You also are going to want to know how to attach your tippet material to your tapered leader as you begin to add that on. Those are different knots. However, it's part of how you're going to rig up your fly rod when you're on the water. Now, I can tie almost all the knots that I tie in under 15 seconds. Is that a big deal? Not really. Now, I practice it a lot, but the difference is When years and years ago, I wasn't as proficient with knots. It would take me 5 to 10 minutes to re-rig my line. That's time that I'm out of the water and I'm not fishing. When I'm out with beginners, people that are relatively new, quite often they begin to re-rig and set up their fly rod for a new fashion or even at the beginning of the day. And often it takes them 20 minutes or longer to get those knots tied. If the only time you practice your knots is when you're in the field, it's going to take a long time to get that proficiency. What I recommend you do is pick out a few knots that you like, that you feel comfortable with, you feel confident in the knot strength. Learn to tie those knots. We've got some videos you can watch on our YouTube channel. They're fantastic videos, step-by-step instructions. There's a lot of other videos out there. But the way to really learn those knots is not to do it one time. But for me, I would spend 30 days, 5 to 10 minutes every day practicing that knot. My fingers learn how to put pressure and how to pull and how to quickly put that knot together. Almost all the knots that I tie, I could tie them with my eyes closed. I've been doing it a long time. When I'm on the water, it takes me 1 or 2 minutes to go from one setup to the next setup in the new situation. Tip number 6, learn to tie knots, practice them, become proficient. Tip number 7, learn to cast your fly rod. Now folks, I started fly fishing when I was 7 years old. We as a family would camp. I started out spin fishing. I realized I wanted to get into fly fishing. So when I started fly fishing, there was nobody around to teach me. I had to get the books, I had to read, and I had to figure out, how do I get that line out there just a little bit? Oh, I got a fish, I got a fish. I couldn't cast very well. It was ugly. I had no idea what I was doing. Now, over the years, I have worked on my cast. I have taken lessons. I fish with a lot of guides. When I fish with a guide, one of the things I ask them, hey, I want you to make me a better fisher person by the end of the day. I want you to help me become a better caster. So if you see something, I want you to point that out to me. I have gone and paid for casting lessons, and I have worked on my casting. And it makes a real difference in my proficiency being able to cast. If you want to reduce some of the frustration, increase your chances to catch more fish, learn to cast. Take a private lesson. Ask a friend to watch you or video you so you can actually see what's happening. Tip number 7, learn to cast. Tip number 8, wear sunglasses when you're fly fishing. When I'm fly fishing, my sunglasses are always on. Now I've got different shades of glasses, so if I'm out on a cloudy day, I'm going to have a lighter shade of glasses that I'm going to still be able to see. I like to have polarized lenses. I can see into the water. It makes a big difference being able to see what's happening just under the glare of the water. Polarized glasses will allow you to do that. The big reason I want you to wear sunglasses is you're going to be flinging that fly line around, and it's going to have a hook attached to the end. Last summer, I was in Alaska. It was a windy day. Most of the time when we're fly fishing, we're going to be in the wind. We're going to be fishing with someone else. So it's not just our line that I'm worried about, it's someone else's line. One of my good friends, we're fly fishing in the wind. We had big salmon flies. We were chasing salmon. The wind blew the line into his head. He buried a hook, literally buried it a half an inch right behind his ear. Folks, that's right behind your precious eyeball. Imagine if he didn't have glasses on, that hook comes right towards his eye. He could lose his eye. Folks, it's a safety. It's important to wear sunglasses or glasses of some sort when you're out there fly fishing. Okay, I always have them on. I've never hooked myself, but it only takes the one time. Make sure you have sunglasses on to protect your eyes from that fly flying through the air. Tip number 9, fish with friends. Fish with friends that have gone a little further down their journey than you have in fly fishing. Ask people that you see. Folks, 99.9% of the people you run into on the water that have a fly rod in their hand are going to be happy to help you, to watch what you're doing and give you some tips and tricks that they use when they're out on the water. Maybe you don't know the water. Maybe they know the water real well. Ask them. Stop and talk to people. Fish with people that are a little bit further along that journey. Have them help you. Fish with a guide and ask the guide to help you. A lot of times guides are taking people out that just want to catch fish. They might not want to learn. When I fish with a guide, I always tell them, give me some tips that'll make me a better fisher person. How do I catch more fish? How do I make my cast better? How do I make my presentation better? So fish with people that are a little further down that journey. It's going to help shorten that learning curve, and you're going to advance and lose frustration in the game much quicker. Tip number 10, keep your fly rod away from doors. Folks, doors break more fly rods than anything else, okay? Walking through the door to come outside of a building, they break fly rods. Be very cautious. Oftentimes, car doors are responsible for breaking a lot of fly rods. What I see people do, and the mistake they make, is they're getting ready in the morning to go fishing. They get to the water, they're excited, they put their rod together. They lean their rod up against their rig just like this. They then open the door to get in to their car and get something out of their car. Now they're moving over here. They're putting their waders on. They're doing this. A gust of wind comes. The gust of wind blows the fly rod down like this, and the door slams on the fly rod. Ah! I just ruined my day. I don't get to fish. I have a broken rod. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. Folks, I've seen it happen. Luckily, it hasn't happened to me, but I've seen it happen. Doors break more fly rods than anything else. What do I do with my rod when I'm getting ready? I've got it put together. Maybe I have a reel on it, maybe I don't. Here's what I do, folks. I pick up my windshield wiper. I set my fly rod down right here. I put my windshield wiper down. It holds my fly rod in place. I have even traveled from one site to the next site, if it's not too far of a trip, with my fly rods here. As long as I don't have any overhanging trees, I'm going to be okay. But this will generally hold my fly rod in a good position, and it will keep it away from any of the doors or somebody else making an accident and stepping on the fly rod and breaking it. Tip number 10, keep your fly rod away from doors. Folks, there's your 10 tips and tricks to make your life easier with fly fishing. Now, these are not hard, fast rules. You can do whatever you want to do, whatever works for you, whatever makes your life easier. Over my 45 years of fly fishing, these tips and tricks have made my life easier. Less frustration in my attempt to fly fish. Now, I want you to keep a couple of things in mind. Number one, 71% of the Earth's surface is covered by water. That could be an indication that you should spend 70% of your time or more fishing. Just saying. Now, if you do that, you spend the time on the water, you're going to get better at fishing. It's the only way that we improve our game. Plus, it gives us an opportunity to connect with others, to connect with nature, and be in the pursuit of those wild fish that we love to chase. Folks, if you found something useful, share the video, hit the like and subscribe button, check out some of our other videos, stop in the shop, tell us what your tips and tricks are. See you on the next video.